This is Adrian Arnold, Instructor Arnold with Halo Defense Solutions, bringing you success from within with personal protection, both armed and unarmed. We have here our Chief Operations Officer, Dantes Anderson. He's going to introduce himself. I'm going to introduce myself just so you guys know who we are, and then we're going to go over our topic tonight. Our topic tonight is talking about long time exposure to violence and how it affects individuals in good ways and bad ways, and just some of our thoughts. And this is to, prompt other people to consider where they're at on the spectrum of violence, where they're at in terms of comfortability with violence, emotional maturity, and things like that. And we're going to also go over some books. The books we're going to be referencing tonight, I'm going to always try to offer something for you guys to do some study and some searching with. The book tonight is When Violence is the Answer by Tim Larkin. It's a very good book. It talks about psychology, talks about the anatomy of violence, and some other things along that line. So go ahead, Dante, if you can introduce yourself, let everybody know what your experience is, both training-wise and, whatever else you want to share.
They said name's Dante. I've been a part of Halo Defense Solutions for the last 2-3 years, something like that.
2-3 years. You've been a part of it since 2010.
Yeah, it's 2010. That's a long time, man. It's been a long time. Since 2010, and since that time, I've done a lot of different things. My background includes things as I worked for Philadelphia Private Police. For those of you who don't know, there's a public sector and private sector to the law. And I worked in the private side. No, it was not just public safety. I was actually sworn in by a judge as a police officer. I worked for multiple security companies. I have multiple certifications to work in an armed capacity for security. I have our certifications to work in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. If you don't know about any of those certifications, getting certified in New Jersey is something very hard to do. So I put a lot of time, work, and effort into the knowledge that comes with being able to have these certifications. I have 12 plus years in martial arts training. I have my green belt certification through Halo Martial Arts. The instructor there is a great guy.
And green belt's a lot heavier than a lot of other black belts, all right?
Yeah. That green belt is that green belt.
You don't hand out belts.
But you guys should really get to know that instructor, Adrian Arnold. He's a good guy. He's a good guy. But yeah, I have my green belt through Halo Martial Arts. Yeah, that's pretty much my background.
All right.
NRA firearms instructor.
Don't forget that.
That's important, So I am a firearms instructor. I got certified. Guess it's been about a year now. I've been certified as an NRA instructor. A
little bit more than a year and a half, something like that.
Oh yeah, you're right.
You did it in the summer, right?
Right. So it's been about a year and a half. I've been certified as a NRA instructor and teaching classes alongside of Adrian here. And matter of fact, you were teaching the class that I got certified in.
I know.
So
me and Boyle.
Yeah, you and Boyle, man. Good guys, man. Good guys.
All right, so a little bit about myself. Instructor Arnold here. I've been dealing with martial arts and violence for the majority of my life. I've got multiple black belts in different styles. I have Hapkido, Koryo Gundo, which is sword style. I have a black belt in Chinese kickboxing, Sanda, Taekwondo, stuff like that. I've always liked striking arts because they're very emphatic. If I hit you, you're going to sleep. I mean, I'm breaking something. I don't gotta wait for a count. I gotta hope that it breaks or something like that. I just hit you. I get you stumbling or you going to sleep. One of the two.
Oh yeah, well I play with it.
I know. Yeah, it's useful. So I like that stuff. Former police officer. I have, after I stopped working as a cop, I got into teaching personal protection for civilians. I realized the impact of violence when it visits people and they're not prepared for it quite emphatically. I was always interested in it, but since that time, I've been teaching people full time in different capacities. I what else is there? I'm trying to think. All sorts of stuff. So I've been around and thinking about violence for a long time. Our topic today is talk about how violence affects you and the good and bad, and just some of our thoughts on it, and try to prompt other people to think about it. So um, I guess for myself, I grew up in Philly, primarily in Strawberry Mansion. Before that, in West Philly, in the '90s. On the after effects of all the crack babies coming out. You see crack vials on the street, all sorts of stuff. It was not uncommon to hear, it was common, not uncommon. It was common to hear gunshots, regularly. A lot of stuff was happening. I know initially during my youth, I had tried to do that whole like diplomatic immunity type bullshit, try to get in with the bad people. And, hopefully they leave me alone more than they picking on other people. And then I had one fateful day where my immunity ran out, and I was getting bullied and beat up like everyone else. And I remember distinctly. I know, right? I was like, wait, I did a re up my. Oh man, I'm out of my insurance. What's up?
you, you let your card expire.
I was like, "Fire, fire, bro." But I remember quite literally getting beat up in front of my house, and I was just like, I can't let my mom see this. And something deep inside me compelled me to fight. And
Well,
I
you
fought
know
that.
what?
What you say?
I said, you know what? I know your mom, and I feel like she'd have beat you for getting beat up in front of your house.
Um,
You know?
Not my mom, maybe my sister. My oldest sister was a lion, yo. She was the one that everybody within like a 2 mile radius was afraid to rumble. So like when
There
she
you go.
came running down the block, people was like, oh, we gotta go start jumping over fences, playing dead, all that shit. So I was beat. I know wasn't no smoke back then. My sister was not somebody to play with. So I remember beating the dude up. He ran into his house. His brother ran, started beating me up. His older brother, and then my brother came down. We beat them both into the house. They locked themselves in their rooms, and we like ate a sandwich and left. And I remember that was like the best tasting sandwich I ever had because it was well earned.
Well learned. Yeah, you earned that one.
um,
I get that.
yeah, pretty much, man. I needed that. But I realized after that point that people will do to you what you let them do to you, and like no matter the person, you have to show that you are willing to fight.
For sure.
I learned after that never being afraid of anybody, be it a group of people. Like, usually when a group of people show up, try to jump you, they expect you to be scared or cower or try to plead or run. And my question was like, who's getting the first? And I would
There you
always
go.
start with like a warning, which kind of sound like being like, you know, braggadocious or like, whatever. But I'd be like, all right, y'all want to jump me, but whoever comes within arm's reach is gonna get sent to the hospital, something like that. Like I'm wrecking somebody soon, and like who wants to get wrecked? And people like, yeah. And like a lot of times they think you're bullshit, but once you actually wreck somebody, they start wilting and stuff.
Yeah, people change their mind, man. I've actually taken that approach as well, uh, where I just like, all right, they're gonna jump me, and I just pick one out the group and point at them like, they might jump me, but you going to the hospital. You know what I mean? And it's normally the one that's like that, ain't really saying nothing, kind of in the back, like I don't really want to be here. You know what I mean? That's normally the one that I point out, like they might get me, but you going to the hospital. Um, he tends to change his mind, and once he
Yeah,
backs down, he's going to the next one.
yeah.
All right, he ain't fighting no more. You going to the hospital. You know what I mean? I might get jumped, but you
Somebody
going
going
to
to
the
the hospital.
hospital.
Yeah,
Somebody going to the
yeah,
hospital.
yeah, yeah. So growing up in Philly, Philly's known as Philadelphia. It has one of the highest rates for gunshot wounds and stuff like that for victims going in the hospital, stuff like that. I know before I was a young man, meaning like when I was 11, I seen my first dead body. I know people that were killed. I know people that done killing. And growing up around violence, I was always very interested in learning how to protect myself, how violence works, how to not look like a victim, because that's something I noticed too, that people look for prey. You know, predators look for prey. If you look at an animal kingdom, in which a lot of people don't like referring to humans as animals, we're not that far removed, especially in some circumstances, but especially with energy like violence is a very primal energy, a very deep, primordial energy, something deep from the history and ages in us. That's the energy we all have, but a lot of people ignore it. That is something very much so about power and who thinks they have the power. So you never see, like, you ain't gonna see a lion jump into the ocean and attack a great white. You're not gonna see the alligators try to squirt up a hippo. Like, it's just they just know, like, I'm gonna try to get that little wildebeest digging some water because they ain't paying attention. I'm gonna get the one that looks sickly. I'm gonna get the one that's separated and lost. There's the same things that happen to people when you're in the wrong neighborhood. You look like you're not paying attention. You're under the influence. Stuff like that. So predators look for that type of stuff. So I realized that at a young age and was very interested in figuring out how violence works and how to get comfortable with violence, meaning that I know how to react and I'm not afraid of it. And I know how to use it. Violence is a tool. It's another form of communication. A criminal will walk up to you and stab you. Ain't nothing personal. You ain't had to say nothing, do nothing. He's stabbing you because he wants your wallet, he wants your car, or he just, you're in his way to go somewhere else. You might be about to rob a bank, or you might be a witness in the area. He got to kill you before he does something else. Right. So it's nothing personal. A lot of times people think violence, you have to do something to be targeted by it. Like, you have to invite it in some way.
No, not at all.
It could just be time and place, a whole bunch of factors. Go ahead, sir. You say what?
Absolutely. I agree full-heartedly. Violence finds everyone. You know what I mean? Doesn't matter who you are. Doesn't matter how old you are. Violence finds everybody. You know what I mean? At some point, it's like I tell people all the time. Life shows up for everybody at some point. You know what I mean? It just is what it is. The thing is being prepared when it does. Being prepared to deal with the violence when it does find you. My introduction to violence was a little different. Growing up, when I was around like 5, 6 years old, my mom used to have my older cousins come over to the house and beat us up.
They call Child Protective Services.
Yeah. No, but my older cousin, man, he's a big dude, man. He's a big dude, man. He's at least 2 feet taller than me. Had 56 pounds on me at the time. Like, I was 5, 6, 7 years old. He was, 14, 15, 16. Like, he was a grown man. You know what I mean? But he used to come to the house, and it was always like really random. It was never like, all right, I know, big cousin is coming over today. It's Monday. I know when I walk in the house on Monday, big cousin gonna be there, and I gotta fight with big cousin. No, it was always really random. Just, walking the house from school, and he jump from behind the door and tackle you, to the floor or something, or you're coming down the steps to get some cereal in the morning, and he's sitting on the couch waiting for you, to try to get to the kitchen to get your cereal. But he used to beat us up, you know what I mean? And he never, now that I'm older, I know and realize, that I was never in any real danger, you know what I mean? But at, 6, 7 years old, somebody that's, a foot or two bigger, taller than you, you know what I mean? Someone that's wider than you, hitting you, and, who's hitting you to the point where, it's like, it hurts. I'm bleeding now. You know what I mean? It puts fear on you. You know what I mean? And I decided then, like, all right, either he's just going to keep randomly beating me up, or I'm going to fight back. You know what I mean? And so I decided then that I needed to start fighting back. And when I was...
you remember how long it took, or how many instances happened before you decided you need to just fight back?
Oh yeah, it took about. It took him hitting me and beating me up about 5 or 6 times before I decided I wasn't just going to stand there and get beaten anymore. Because, like I said, someone that much bigger than you hitting you and everything, or just randomly attacking you, it's like, all right, I'm smaller, I can't fight back. What am I supposed to do? He's bigger than me. And even, at that young, being untrained, in martial arts or boxing or whatever else, you know what I mean? After a point, it was just like, look, I'm gonna do something, fighting, kicking, scratching. I don't care what I gotta do, but you gonna know you was in this fight. You know what I mean? And that went on for about 6 or 7 years before it finally stopped. And the last time he and I got into it, I was on the phone talking to a girl I was talking to at the time. He walked up and smacked the phone out of my hand while I was talking, and then pushed me. And I was like, "Yo, like I'm not scared of you," and pick my phone up. So when he told me no, I punched him in his face, and then we fought. And then after the fight, he went and told my mom, "All right, he's good." I was about 12 or 13 at the time.
That's an interesting, man. So that's one thing I actually kind of considered too. Growing up, being a father, like my children are very much protected from that type of violence in the ghettos. In the ghettos, you have a lot of violence that just comes from people being poor, people being stressed from other things, be it family stuff, be it poverty, be it just being too close. A lot of times you have, especially summertime, there's a lot of beef because there's people around. Wintertime, you got beef because it's cold outside and I'm angry.
Right.
so there's a lot of stuff added to the energy, in the neighborhood. Um, and I went through a lot of stuff. Like I said, like I've gone through people trying to jump me. I've had people try to stab me. I've been, around when people were shooting. I had people try to shoot at people I was with. I've seen, drug dealers get this corner shot up and stuff like that. So there was always something around, and you had to like learn, like how to sense when was time to go, what to be around, what was happening, stuff like that. And I was just like, all right, well, are my children actually getting a disservice by not being around violence, which sounds really weird, right? But I was
Yeah.
just like, you have to be exposed to a certain type of violence to be able to use extreme violence. So that was a question I had for a long time. Um, and I wasn't sure about like how do I prepare the children to be able to protect themselves in a very violent way if necessary. So what are your thoughts on that in terms of like exposure to violence and being able to use violence to protect yourself as a tool once again?
So being, I think being exposed to violence is important. As I said, I was exposed to violence or some level of violence at 6 years old, and then growing up in Philly and seeing some of the different things I saw, be it someone being killed or seeing dead bodies or what I mean, things like that.
What age were you when you first seen your first dead body?
Seeing my first dead body, I was seeing my first confirmed dead body. I was I was 9 or 10.
What was that?
I was coming out the house on my way to school. Yeah, walked out the house and the guy was laying dead across the street. He had been shot in the middle of the night.
Fourth grade?
Say it again.
He was like in fourth grade.
Yeah. Prior to that, when I was 8 years old, I was at my aunt's house and I saw a guy shot in front of me. I'm pretty sure he died, but I don't know for sure that he died, but I'm pretty sure he did. But he was shot 4 times in the chest at point blank range. You know what I mean? Literally, like directly across the street from me.
Is that the one you're talking about when the dude was like talking to somebody's girl or something like that?
Yeah. So the whole thing was crazy. The whole thing was over. The whole thing was over a girl. The guy saw the girl come out the laundromat and decided he wanted to talk to her. She said no. She had a boyfriend. He decides he wasn't taking no for an answer, so he goes over and grabs her. And when she, went to go snatch away her boyfriend, who was in the car, got up and came over, pushes the guy, swings on the guy, and his friend, who was the aggressor, his friend was in the car, got out the car with a gun, came over. They started arguing and going back and forth, and then After shooting in the air 3 times, he puts the gun in the guy's chest and shoots him 4 times. And all this all because she said, I don't want to talk to you. You know what I mean?
How to keep his hands to himself, yeah.
Yeah, all that happened because of that. So, being exposed to all those different things, I think, has given me the mindset that I have now, where my mindset is I'm not going to be a victim. You know what I mean? I'm not going to be, the one that's laying in the hospital bed. I'm not going to be the one that's laid out in the middle of the street. You know what I mean? Because I couldn't defend myself. So, seeing violence and being around violence, you know what I mean, from, a street fight to murder, you know what I mean, I think has prepared me to be able to defend myself to the capacity, to whatever capacity that I need to. You and I have the same dilemma because I grew up, in West Philly, in an area, that people call, that everyone calls the bottom. And if you're from Philly, you know where the bottom is. When my daughter was born, within a year, I moved. You know what I mean? And I'd been there my whole life. My father and uncles grew up around there. You know what I mean? But when my daughter was born, I moved because I knew the area. I knew the level of violence that was around there. I knew the issues that I had growing up, the issues that my family, had around there and everything. And I didn't want my daughter exposed to that kind of stuff. As a father, you do what you have to do to protect your children. So you and I have the same dilemma where it's like, okay, am I doing my daughter a disservice because she's not exposed, to any of this stuff? Or,
and it's funny how crazy that might sound, like doing them a disservice, but
yeah,
the whole thing is trying to, like, if I didn't grow up in a ghetto and violence around I did, I wouldn't be who I am today in terms of being comfortable with violence. Like, I remember as I worked as a cop, a lot of times I would be fine in different scenarios where other cops would be, blood pressure's really high and they're like at a very elevated state. And I'm just like, hey, this is a fight, or is this a hey, is this a this, or we don't like he don't got a weapon out, like is this at this situation, so we just scuffling with him, like stuff like that. And granted, the speed of things, you don't know exactly what will happen, but I had so much experience from pre-adolescence to adulthood around violence. I could read things well.
right. Well, so all that comes into, like you said, seeing different things happen and being around violence and everything. You begin to play out scenarios in your head. You know what I mean? And I do that all day. You know what I mean? All day I'm thinking, okay, if this person does this while I'm walking past, you know what I mean? How am I going to react if they twist their body this way? If they if they got both of their hands in their pocket, and once I get within 10 feet of them, they take one of their hands out of their pocket. You know what I mean? What am I going to do? To counteract the situation.
Now,
And
along
that's
with that,
just,
was that something someone taught you, or that's just something you learned instinctively from just being around things?
it's a combination of both. It was something I learned instinctively from being around violence and having things happen to me, or seeing things happen to other people. And it's something that I don't want to say perfected, but a mindset that I matured in through boxing and martial arts. You know what I mean? So I'm matured in that mindset because of boxing and martial arts, but it was something that I learned, just from growing up in the area I
Now,
grew
a
up
funny
in.
thing, growing up in Strawberry Mansion and stuff, I remember distinctly. I went to Central High School, which is a very densely populated school. So you got people on top of people. And I remember how mentally draining it was to size up everyone as we're walking around hallways like all day doing that stuff. And I remember that was it. I remember it was so taxing that by the time somewhere in my second year, I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, it's too much work. I can't size up everyone because it's just too much. And that was something like no one ever taught me, but it just, as you said, something I learned from the environment of being around stuff.
Mm.
Now, interesting thing too, like I have for a long time wondered, if you need to be around violence to be able to use violence as a tool, like be comfortable with it. And I know when I've had clients I was consulting with, teaching them, personal protection techniques and stuff like that, I've had clients say, "Hey, isn't this a little too violent?" And like, they would be very apprehensive. And I'd be like, "Well, it's not like someone cut in front of you, self checkout, ma'am, or whatever. Like, it's for your life or death." But some people just weren't comfortable. I know when I was teaching martial arts to some people, like I had some junior ROTC guys and ROTC guys that are, supposed to be going in to be leaders in the military, but they could not hold under pressure. And I was just like, I made it a point to put more pressure on them because if you're going to be like leading people's lives, you damn sure better be able to like handle some pressure and some scrapping.
Absolutely.
A lot of those guys folded. So I remember having this question for years, like, do you need to be around violence and grow up in violence to be able to do violence, to use it as a defensive tool? All right. And I know I spoke to Jim Smokey West, whose book I gave to you. I met him at a conference and I had an opportunity to sit down and talk to him. And I asked him this question. Jim Smokey West, if you don't know him, is spent a lifetime in violent realms. He's toward, look him up. All right, I'm going to do a disservice trying to explain him, but he's been in over 500 street fights, shot, stab, burn, like all sorts of stuff. So he's been through all sorts of stuff. And I asked him this question: do you need to grow up in extreme violence to be able to use it as a tool? And he said, to paraphrase, yes. And I was just like, that's crazy because I thought so, but I didn't have enough data to confirm it. And he's been around enough people, and he's just like, yeah, you need to be around it to be able to use it as a tool for personal protection.
So it's just like using any other tool. You know what I mean? You need to understand the violence. You need to understand what it is and where it comes from, and even why it comes. You know what I mean? In order to use it. If you're one of those people who, like we were talking about earlier, who think that the only way violence to be done to you is if you do something to someone else,
that's a lot of
you don't actually understand what violence is.
Or they think violence is a bad thing, so they won't use it,
Right. So, and because of that, because you don't understand what violence is, you can't properly use it. So when you have people who grew up around violence, or you know what I mean, who has seen violence and who understands violence, they're better able to use it, you know what I mean, to protect themselves, to protect their family, versus someone who lived a complete, sheltered life, you know what I mean, those kids and who went to private schools, who's never seen a fight before in their life, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm always surprised when I meet an adult who's never been in a fight.
Yeah, you know what I mean? You're into those people who's never been or seen a fight, you know what I mean, before in their life, and then something happens or something goes wrong, you know what I mean? They say something to the wrong person, they get punched in the face, and now they holding their eye looking around for a teacher.
A lot of people don't realize when you're crossing different boundaries, like I almost just say something, like you say certain things that in a lot of societies you're inciting a fight thing,
Right.
You can't say anything to anyone. You can't call people certain. You can't use your voice a certain way, speaking loud. You can't gesture and point at people. Like, all right, those things to cause fights.
Exactly. And once you become an adult, having not grown up in an environment where you haven't seen or been around any violence, or where you don't know,
you don't have to
understand what violence is, you're at a disadvantage. Is it impossible to learn to use violence as a tool? No. However, it is a lot harder. You have to train and work harder to change.
Well, back to your point. You have to train. You have to educate yourself. It's like anything else. People who grow up on islands or whatever probably tend to be better swimmers or whatever. Like your climate, helps gives you your constitution as an individual. So if you haven't grown up around violence, don't have a certain understanding and comfort with violence, a certain history of violence, you got to learn from people who do. I always am trying to learn from people who have more times in different environments. Like I haven't been in active war zones, so I go train with special, forces and dudes that have done that type of work, so I can learn from them. That's the same thing for violence and personal protection. If you don't have the skills and experience, or even if you want to compare, because everybody's experience is different, do training, do education. It will help you time travel. So instead you have to spend 10, 15 years like you and I did growing up in these very violent environments, spend a day, 2 days, spend 10 hours. You can learn from us, and then you can start practicing. The funny thing is, even if you don't have the number of years as another individual, you having that exposure, even if it's a course or seminar, will give you a reference point for when you are faced with violence. A lot of times you look at people, they get that deer in the headlights type look. That's
Right.
because they're stuck and they don't know what to do. But if you are referring to different data in your head and experiences, then your mind will automatically try to grab onto anything so it can try to prepare for the situation. So that's why investing in training is very important, because a course can be anywhere from a couple $100 to a couple $1,000.
Right.
But all of that is way cheaper than a funeral or reconstructive surgery or the lifetime of going to see a therapist to work through the PTSD and trauma that you have from this experience. So even if you survive the physical onslaught, the repercussions and consequences after it can be a lifetime.
Yeah. One of the things that was said to me when I was getting certified in Pennsylvania, when I was getting certified in Pennsylvania, I was training under Mike Hall, who's actually one of the people who wrote the Act 235. I was training under him, and we were talking about different scenarios and everything, and he actually knows my uncle, and he certified my uncle, certified my cousins and everything. So he and I were just having a one-on-one conversation one day, and we were talking about different scenarios and being put in different scenarios, and how the law looks at the different scenarios we were talking about and everything. And he looked at me before we ended the conversation. He looked at me, looked me in my eye. He said, "Have you ever thought about killing somebody?" So I said, "Yeah." He said, "No, I mean, really, really think about it. Like, have you ever really thought about taking your gun, pointing at somebody, pulling the trigger? How many times you gonna pull the trigger? How much blood there's gonna be? You know what I mean? Like, is there going to be broken bone on the ground? There's going to be brains on the ground. Like, have you ever really thought about killing somebody? Have you ever really thought about taking someone's life?" So I said, "Well, I guess I've never thought about it to that extreme." And I was 18 at the time. And he said, "I've never really thought about it to that extreme." And he said, "If you don't listen to nothing else I've told you, listen to this. Start thinking about it. Start considering it. Really think about it." He said, "When you go home tonight, dream about it." He said, "Because if and when the time comes, you need to know how you're going to react in that situation. You
That's very
need to
true.
know.
One
And
thing
if
a lot of
not, you run into the same situation you just said, the deer
freeze.
in headlights."
Yeah.
You know
And
what I
that's one
mean?
thing a lot of people don't think about with training. That's also in the book, When Violence is an Answer. He talks about lifetime martial artists who train on how to kill people but never considered the emotional impact of it, how it looks to see someone take their final breath, what it looks like to see someone, bleeding out and have their guts out or something like that. Like he went through the training, he went through the tactics, but he never went through the emotional, spiritual, and psychological aspects of it. The same thing if you buy a gun, you need to be ready to carry that weight, which is why I tell people the first thing is education. You got to see what it's like for someone to get shot. You got to see what it's like, the repercussions and all those other things that a lot of courses don't do, which is an injustice and what a lot of people don't realize. You're carrying a gun, there's a lot of responsibility with it. Like if you feel like,
Absolutely.
oh, you're Superman or something like that, or Superwoman because you have a gun, you don't have any of the training that you need for a firearm.
Absolutely. Once again, going through training, another thing that I've learned, um, once you pull your gun out, once you take the gun out of that holster, whether you pull the trigger or not, whether you point it at someone or not, you know what I mean? Once the gun comes out of that holster, you have now opened the door that you cannot close. You have now taken a step in a direction that you cannot come back from. And one of the things that we teach in the class, one of the things I always make sure I bring up in the class is carrying a gun is an emotional weight. And it's for that very reason, because once that gun comes out, again, whether the trigger is pulled or not, whether someone lives or dies from that, you know what I mean, interaction, there's no coming back from that. You're here now. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? You've taken a step that really changes your life or changes your mental mindset. You know what I mean? it changes your mental mindset on life. And if you're not prepared for that, even just carrying, you know what I mean, a firearm or a knife or, you know what I mean, whatever, it can really mess you up to the point where, you know, you use it improperly or you don't use it at all.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get ready to conclude. Is there anything you want to add at this point? Or you good?
No, I'm good. Like I said, like I always say, man,
Got any questions you want
trans-
to ask the people before we leave? Any questions you want to prompt them to consider or think about?
my question is not using violence worth your life or your family's life?
I had a friend of mine who I had this exact conversation with. I'm not a gun proponent, you know, but I am a proponent of freedom and being able to live your life fully and freely and truly, you know, and which is why I tell people about personal protection, because sometimes there are going to be people who want to take away your freedom and your ability to live. And we were talking to him, or I was talking to him, and he was very anti-gun. I said, well, what if someone, you know, busting your door and they're just giving you the business, or working you over, you losing this fight? And then they go through, get ready to kill you. You know, they're not letting up. They're not just beating you to, you know, scare you. They're beating you to death. And he said, oh well, he did an emotional response. I'll do my best. I won't let him. I said, all right, that's cool. You're losing this fight. You're not winning. You're about to die. What do? He said, I'll die. I said, wow, that's crazy, because I never even fathomed that. But then he went on. I said, what about your son? Oh well, I'll do my best to protect. I said, no, you're dying. You're losing this fight. You can't beat this person. You're losing this fight. You're on your way out. And he didn't have an answer for it. But his answer was not, I'm going to prepare him, you know, and make sure I'm able to protect my son. I was like, that's crazy. I mean,
yeah, that's completely baffling to me. Like I can't fathom that thought. You know what I
there's
mean?
people like that. And
Of
nothing against them, but man, you need to know which side of the road you're on.
yeah,
You need to know. You need to make sure your brother, sister, boyfriend, whoever, you gotta make sure you know which side they're on. Because when shit gets dirty, you need some backup, you know. Because no one's coming to help you. You're gonna be your own backup, your own first responder. No one's coming to save you. They'll come
yeah,
do a report. They'll put like a little shrine up, some photos or something like that. But it's you. You don't want to have to do it when shit gets dirty, and you got to
exactly.
get dirty. So we offer one-on-one courses. We offer virtual courses online. We offer phone consultations. We offer courses in your home. There's really no excuse not to invest in your most precious resource, which is your life and that of your loved ones. We'll come to your house. We'll go over a home defense plan. We'll help you with your own firearms if you have one. We'll help you select the firearms that work best for you, which is a very big thing that most people won't do. They just go over what firearms are popular, which firearms they like. We will find out what firearm works for you and which one you can use safely and competently. So if you got any questions, hit us up on hillofdefensesolutions.com. You hit us up on YouTube, Instagram. The phone number is 484-441-3193. Email is hillofdefensesolutions@gmail.com. If you got any questions, I want you to think about, are you prepared for violence? Are you comfortable with violence? And how can you use violence to protect yourself and those you care about? Violence is just a tool like anything else. If I can't talk to someone and they're not listening to reason, or they're not able to listen, they may be in an altered state. If I take away their ability to harm me, I'm safe. It's just that simple. And the violence can be a tool to help you do that. Um,
Absolutely.
so as always, remember, bring success from within. I want to ask you guys to think about how prepared you are for this current world, how much you care about being in this world, and what steps you're taking to do that. It's not like a hope or dream. It has to be actionable steps. I'm doing X, Y, and Z so I can do A, B, and C, you know? You got to be very pragmatic and real about it. A lot of people are, you know, they'll make excuses since they haven't been faced with it recently, or they're not around it. But all it takes is one bad day or one bad place or one bad what, and then you're in it, you know. And I rather say prepare for it, so you don't gotta get ready. You're already ready. You know, old expression. You don't gotta get ready if you stay ready. You know.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you once again. I appreciate you getting on with us, Dante, to share with people. I appreciate everybody tuning in. If you got any questions,
No,
pose them down at the bottom. Do you think you need to be around violence or grow up in violence to be able to use violence And what are your thoughts in general about violence as a tool, be it moral or amoral? What are your thoughts on that? All right. Well, everybody have a good night. We'll be dropping more content, and if you need anything, just hit us up on any of our various methods. All right, have a good one, bro. Talk to you later. Peace.
And as always, stay trained, stay prepared, stay safe.